Lamber. I am CEO of Women in Sales. We are the largest global community for women in the field of sales, supplying resources, events, content, educational opportunities, anything that will support women within their sales career. We are here to provide it. And we are co-hosting this event today with the Motive team, which we're super excited about. So we're going to get into that and we're going to learn about Motive. But for those of you who are joining us, let us know your name in the chat, where you're joining from, and if you're comfortable, also what career level you're at. So we kind of know, engage where the audience is sitting today within their sales career. And if you're job seeking too, we'd love to know that. So I am going to kick it over to the Motive team. So I'm going to go to Angie. If you can just introduce Motive and yourself really quick, and then we're going to introduce our other two panelists and just dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at Motive, I think like every other cutting edge, world-class SaaS company, we get to sell software to strangers. But in reality, we work with companies that power the physical economy. Those companies are not strangers. Those are the companies and people that build and power our homes, support our infrastructure, manage our waste, grow and deliver our food. And so we build tools and technology that make these businesses more productive, more profitable, and safer. And I think why I'm really passionate about Motive and, why I love working here is, we hear all the time from customers that when their drivers have the Motive devices in their vehicles and they're partnered with us, that those drivers are better drivers. And that means the roads that, I share with my kids and my family and my community are safer because more fleets on the road have Motive technology in their vehicles. So really passionate about what we do. We save lives here. We say it, we mean it. I've been with the company for almost 5 years. I'm out of our Nashville office, and I'm the sales director for the mid-market team. Happy to be here.
So happy to have you. We have such a cool lineup today. All of these women have such incredible backgrounds, so I'm excited to dive into that. Danielle, can you tell the people who are out here who you are?
Yeah, hi, my name is Danielle Powers. So I am the senior manager of our mid-market SDR team here at Motive. I get the pleasure of partnering with Angie up here on the stage. And so I'm located in Traverse City, Michigan, but I've been at Motive for about 4 years now. I started when we were Keep Truckin' at the time. So I've seen the company grow so quickly over the past 4 years. It's been a really fun ride. I started off as a team lead and I've been so blessed with all the mentorship that I've been given here and worked my way up into my career into senior management.
Amazing. So happy to have you here. Excited to jump more into that journey too, because we definitely want to talk about that and learn some things from you. Mindy, what about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mindy Lamber. I lead our SMB expansion sales team. So I came to Motive about 2.5 years ago, started as a second line leader. Now I'm a third line leader, leading a large team. Really excited to be part of this and really excited to be part of Motive. So thank you.
Amazing. And Motive has actually been a multi-year Women in Sales partner. I think we're in our 2nd year now, which is always exciting to see. So thank you, Motive, for the partnership, and thanks for collaborating on this event today. We have an amazing mix of folks. I was just taking a peek in the chat, and we have basically every career level represented here today in the audience. We have folks who are job seeking as well. So definitely for the job seekers that are with us, we have a little treat at the end because the Motive team is actively hiring. And so we'll be sharing some of their open roles, and you should keep an eye out for those. So to dive right into today's conversation, I think the most natural place to start is how each of you got into sales. We talk a lot about this journey into sales. A lot of us say we kind of fell into it. Very few of us say that we intentionally went into sales. So I'd love to start with you, Mindy. How did you first get into sales? What's your early journey?
Yeah, I'm definitely part of the I fell into it group. I started really young, just right out of high school and going into college. And I needed a way to pay for books and to pay for classes. And so I took a part-time phone sales job for a water purification company. Some people would call it telemarketing. It was definitely B2C. And yeah, I found out really quickly that you get out of sales what you put into it. And I really, really liked that. I could really set these small goals for myself and challenge myself to do better every day. So I started out just trying to make more calls every day than I did the day before, making one more appointment than I did the day before, one more sale the month after. And I rose through the ranks really quickly. I I was number 2 salesperson for a long time. Linda was, just too good to get up to for a long time. She'd been in sales for years. But yeah, it was a small privately owned company, and it turned from just that little part-time thing to, hey, why don't you go full-time and do outside sales? And why don't you train the salespeople? And then why don't you manage a small group? And so, yeah, it set me up for my long-term career. I've gone through a lot of various roles in different companies, but I always stayed true to my passion, which was sales.
Love it. Mindy, you definitely have a fan club that's in the audience today. We have a few shout outs to you already, just mentioning what a great sales leader you are. So go you. I ran a little informal poll in the chat as well to see who fell into sales versus who intentionally went into sales. And surprise, surprise, the fell into sales is the leader right now, but we'll keep that poll going. Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, you can also add me into the one that fell into sales. So I actually went to school and I have a paralegal degree. And I fully intended to go to law school. I wanted to do defense law or business law. I did some internships. I quickly realized that path was not right for me. I did not feel like I was providing as much value as I could. And so I had to find new avenues. So I stumbled through sales through my first job. I was selling insurance to trucking companies, anybody with a fleet size of 1 to 10. So a lot of those owner operators out there. And I started to quickly realize that the effort and the high energy that I put into myself and my career all the time, it started to come back to me. And so it became almost like an addiction in a way of addicting to that hustle and really seeing the returns that I could have and what I could build for my life generally. So what was an unplanned career move turned into something I really fell into a passion for. And so now solving problems, driving results at a higher level, along with finding that passion and mentorship, really helped me start building up my career. And now I get the pleasure to build that with other people and show other people like, hey, what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And really enabling them to be the best in their careers is something that I found a lot of passion in. And so I'm very glad that I stumbled my way in sales.
Love it. Love it. What about you, Angie?
Yeah, I would say I was kind of pushed into it, if that makes sense. I at a couple different parts of my life. In high school, I remember, about to go to college, I loved chemistry, talking to my, chemistry teacher. And I was like, Mr. Campbell, I think I'm going to be a dermatologist. I love skin. I love skincare. That's my calling. I'm going to do that. And he was like, have you ever thought about marketing? And I was like, I've never heard of it. Tell me more. So, I kind of like went business, and then, really didn't know what I was going to do. But, after college, a friend from college was like, hey, if you come and do this interview, if you apply for this job and do this interview, I get $100. And so if you do this interview, it was in Chicago at the time. It's like, if you do this interview and I get $100, I'll take you to happy hour. And I was like, sold. And so I ended up doing an interview at Career Builder. I remember Googling, Googling what do salespeople do? I went to college for marketing. I should know all these things. And, I loved everybody I talked to. I loved the energy on the sales floor. I loved, I was obsessed with this idea of I'm going to work. I knew from the moment that I walked in that door that I was going to work at that company. And, I got to go to happy hour that night because I showed up to the interview, and then I ended up getting the opportunity to work for a sales company in Chicago, and kind of got my start. And, I think people say, you can have a job or career or calling. And I really feel like sales is my calling, as cheesy as it is. I love what I do. I love, getting to work with reps and help them close deals. I love to, get to work with other managers and help them, find ways to develop their reps and develop themselves. And so, I feel like I didn't really fall into sales. I think I was kind of pushed into sales by a couple people. And I'm really grateful that I was, because sales is my calling. I love this. There is, nothing else I'd rather be doing. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Wow. This entire time I've been saying I fell into sales, but I'm very much in your category where my first manager, I went into retail sales right after university because I had to go through retail sales to get into a retail buying program. And my manager at the time was the one, she's like, you don't belong in buying. You need to go to sales. You need to go over here. So I've never thought about it that way, but shout out to all those people who notice and recognize that passion within us when we might not see it for ourselves right away. And props to those journeys and where they lead us. So that's so cool to hear. I think a good starting point for, launching into today's conversation is, we are Women in Sales, the organization, and a lot of what we do is helping support women in their sales careers. There are nuances and differences to the experiences that women have when choosing a career in sales. So I'd be curious, starting with you, Danielle, since launching your career in sales, how have you embraced being a woman in sales? What has the experience been like? Take us through it.
Yeah, that's such a great question because, I think sales can be super male dominated. And for women, it's really hard to be assertive without that fear of judgment. So I've really made it a mission to build those diverse teams and inclusive teams where everybody, regardless of their gender, feels like they can speak up and grow and lead and provide different perspectives. Because if we don't have those different perspectives, we're never going to grow. And so I've been in those cultures where it's very bro-y. I've been in the rooms where I'm the only female leader, and it was really hard for me to really raise my voice. And so from day one, I've really leaned into being a champion for women, supporting women. It's really a core of who I am. I've been in those cutthroat cultures where maybe some women or some men want to tear you down a little bit. And that's something that I've really strived in my teams to completely eliminate any thoughts of that. My baseline is to make sure that we're all working together. And so I think embracing women is a really, it's the core part of it too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the representation matters. And I just want every woman on my team to know that there's a place for them at the top. And I do get really extra hype when I see the ladies at the top of the leaderboard, and I will go out of my way and reach out to them and Slack them and meet with them. How did you do it? Embrace that with other women, build them up as well, and try to incorporate that through leadership down.
Love it. We need more of that in leadership. We need more of that amongst peers. That is amazing. Angie, what about you?
Yeah, I love leaning into being the only girl on calls. There are, I think as a woman, you not get away with things that guys can't, but kind of there are questions that might seem a little weird coming out of a guy's mouth that when I am the woman on the call, it's let me take this one. Let me go down this path. And I think part of that is really leaning into empathy and sales is so emotional. People don't always make the most logical decision when buying something. You really have to be able to tie to someone's emotion. And I think as a woman, that is a huge superpower and just opportunity that we have, that we can really tie things back to emotions and make sure people feel connected and really bought into it. And so I think, I love that. I love a lot of my sales team is we've got lots of guys. And I think they know that that's what I'm going to do when they bring me onto a call is I'm going to make sure that, I make that tie. And even when they ask me for, I'm well, this is what I'm going to do, but my perspective is as a woman. And so I'm going to lean into this. And I think, kind of even coaching our male counterparts to it's okay to do that too, I think has been, something that has helped me be successful in sales, but also sales leadership too.
Yeah, absolutely. Minty, anything to add? What would you add here?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what both Angie and Danielle said. I think for me, I think being authentic is just so critical. So anytime you're talking to a customer, to any of your team members in a leadership call, whatever it is. So I've just really embraced the fact that I know there are times where my perspective will be different, and I just want to be authentic to that. The way I lead my team is often very different than the way some of my counterparts will. I'm okay with that. I feel like that's what's made me a strong leader. I am going to laugh on my calls with my, AEs or managers or, whoever it is. I am going to ask, how their kids are or some of those things, how their, wedding was. Those are things that I care about. And not that all men don't do that. Some of the best leaders I worked for that were men also did that. They were very, self-aware and very empathetic. But I know that's a strength of mine, so I lean into it. And I always tell my managers too as well. You just have to be authentic to who you are. There's also, I also have very dominant parts and where I'll, be assertive, and I need to be at times too. And that's okay also. So yeah, I just embrace who I am, and I try and encourage everyone else around me to be the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think a good place to go next. I was looking through some of the responses that we had in the chat here, and we do have some job seekers that are in the audience. We also have folks at different career levels that are obviously trying to claw their way up. So it'd be great to hear from each of you about when you got promoted to your current role that you're in today and what that transition looked like. Because I know there's a lot of curiosity right now of like, how do I raise my hand? How do I make myself look like a candidate that someone's going to want to bring further up? Who do I talk to? Who do I network with internally? So would love to hear your perspective. And Mindy, maybe we'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it was a pretty big transition when I went from leading sales teams. I had done that for a long time, leading account executives, to leading managers who led account executives, to beyond. So I think that was a big transition because I could have a really close relationship with my AEs. I could be really in the details of a deal. I could talk through all of those deals. You could be very hands-on. And then as you move up in the different levels, you have to start to, you can't be everyone, you can't be everything to everyone at every time. So you have to be very selective where you spend your time and your energy. So I had to then start focusing around when to zoom in and when to zoom out, where I could have high impact on critical things and be a big part of those, and then maybe zoom out and trust in my managers that they could run the day-to-day and the operations. So luckily I have a great team that can do that. But for me, I think in terms of what's important as you continue to grow your career is really just making sure that you're speaking to other leaders around the organization, making sure that you are raising your hand for the big projects, the high visibility projects, the high impact ones. A lot of times those instances are the ones that push you outside of your comfort zone or challenge you the most, but they give you the best opportunity to have visibility and to make the biggest impact. So that would be probably my biggest advice, is that in the instances where I did get large promotions or kind of take a different step in my career, it was usually tied to something like that. It wasn't just that, hey, things went well on the day-to-day. It was usually tied to some big initiative or some big project or something I raised my hand for or was a big part of.
This is very insightful. Yeah, I think it's going to be great to hear each of your perspectives on this, because it's so different, each of our journeys when we got promoted to that next role, what we did. I have shared this story before, but one of the big promotions I got, I created a 20-page deck of everything that I wanted. I wanted to create this role from scratch, and then marched into my co-founder's office. And I was like, I need to show you this. And I think I was like early 20s at the time, and just so like gung-ho about like getting this promotion, and it was so wild, and I crack up about it. I did end up getting the role, and they did like create the role from scratch, but it was just such a random approach. I'm like, I would never necessarily recommend that, but it is cool to hear everyone's stories, because you have such differences in how people did that and looking for those opportunities and those projects internally that's so critical. So Danielle, what about you? What was your promotion path? How did it look? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I don't think mine was much further off from Mindy's. Going from manager frontline, working with SDRs hand in hand, to more of a senior manager role where I was managing those managers. That was a big transition for me, and it was a healthy dose of discomfort. But I think the phrase is, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing, and that was very, very true for me. And so what I've really, really learned was at what point, you trust everybody that's on your team, but also inspecting what you expect from there too, and finding that balance within it. When do I move back and think more high level? When do I go in and learn from the team on the nitty gritty level? When do I have my team manage up very strong? So it was all about that transition was really, really difficult for me, but I was really blessed to be able to lean in and listen and adapt really quickly with the people that were around me. Like I've said, I've had great mentorship to where if I had some sort of blocker, I had a whole slew of people that I could go to and say, hey, what would you do if you were in this situation? I think I want to do that so I can make the best decision possible for my team, and leaning in on my business partners as well. And I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give for anybody that really wants to level up in their career is, one, make sure that you are saying it what you want to your leader. Do not hesitate to go to your leader and say, hey, I really want to be in XYZ position. Where can I go? Can you connect me with other people to get me there? Because for an SDR's perspective, as much as I want you, every SDR on my team forever and ever, because they hold a true place in my heart, I want them to get promoted up into AEs. That's the ultimate goal for me, and that's where my passion lies. So raise your hand, say exactly what you want and where you want to be, and like act as if you are in the position already so that you're a shoe-in to move up. And also raise your hands for those stretch projects, because when you have those stretch projects, that's going to build a skill set for your next level.
Absolutely. Great advice here. Angie, anything to add about your journey?
Yeah, I raised my hand. I was a good example of like, I like wanted to be the director, like, was a frontline manager for a while. And I like actually like was like, hey, put me in, coach, to my boss at the time. And he was like, no. And then, I kind of did what Danielle said. Like I, just kept, working on the bigger projects, and, kept kind of like making myself the obvious choice. And so, I kept advocating for myself and like, getting the results and working with other teams. And, over time, I think I wore him down enough where he was like, fine, I'll give you a shot. But yeah, I think, no one's going to promote you. You have to promote yourself. And that looks, different in, any role, but you got to advocate for yourself. And then, we talk a lot about like doing the stretch projects, and it is important, like do the things that are, high visibility, that are going to have the biggest impact on the business. Like make sure you sign up for those, but like be careful what you like, not to sign up for everything. And I think what I mean by that is, early in my career, I wouldn't say I was a personality hire entirely. I was good at my job too, but I was the person that was going to plan the happy hour. I'd be on the team of all guys, and they'd say like, hey, let's get the holiday party scheduled, Angie. And I'd be like, absolutely. And I think don't feel like you have to sign up for the not meaningful things too. I think I said yes to planning all of the fun things that, when it was time to like, actually take on like a really meaningful one, I was busy doing all this meaningless work that, didn't have an impact on the business at the end of the day. And so, by all means, if you love being the party planner, be the party planner, but do not let that get in the way of you having the bandwidth and the opportunity to do something that's meaningful. So I think really, as the woman on the team, like naturally, and not because, they're bad people, but because you probably have said yes to it before, but say no to more stuff too. Like you don't have to plan the happy hour. You don't have to be the person that, does like the cheesy heartwarming initiative. Like, no, like you're going to be the person that's going to close the big deals. You're going to be the person that like works on the big project, and that's how you're going to get promoted. And I think just be careful what you say yes to.
Wow, that is great advice. Because as I think back across many of the companies I work for, and including myself, you do look across like a lot of the ERGs, a lot of the like party planning committees. Like you start to look across, you're like, okay, there's parity across who is in charge of certain initiatives, and that's a really good point. It's whatever you're saying yes to, you're saying no to something else. So making sure that everything's in alignment. That is such great advice. And I also like what you said about also acknowledging that you got to know initially. Like, I think that's really important, is we're not always going to get yeses in our career. Whether we raise our hand and we want to go into the director role, getting a no isn't a no forever. Or if it is a no forever, then that's a great indication to start looking at a different company. So it's still a great redirect. But those no's are so impactful, because you can figure out exactly what you're missing and what that lag is between where you are today, where you want to go. And so don't take those for granted. Don't take them as a no forever. But do take the feedback that you get and figure out what you can do with it to go to the next level, if you will. And we are almost at the halfway point, which is crazy because I feel like we just started talking. But for anybody that's in the audience with us today, if you have questions for any of our panelists, for the panel as a whole, please post those in the Q&A tab. We have a couple that are coming through in there, so we're going to get to those at the end of the conversation, but would love for more Q&A questions, so we will get to those as soon as we are able, but keep sharing them. And as we move forward, we're going to move into skills and qualities in terms of developing and advancing your career. So starting to get into, the really tactical side. So Danielle, can you kick us off as you think about what skills and qualities helped you to get promoted, to get more visibility internally?
Yeah, I think for me, executive presence has always been like a huge focus, is how I show up, how I communicate, how I command a room with confidence. Confidence is not something that always comes naturally for me specifically. And so, before joining Motive, like I mentioned, I was in a very bro heavy culture. So I kind of had to find my own way as a woman with being true to who I am, but also being very confident in what I am saying and being taken seriously. So that executive presence has been really big for me. I think self-reflection is really huge too, because as I've moved up in my roles, it's less often that I get very, very direct feedback unless I'm going out and seeking it. And sometimes my best self-reflection comes at the end of the day. And then I grab my phone and pull up my notes and put my ideas all on paper while I get some feedback from that. But at the end of the day, it's all about, taking a look back at what you're doing and what you could do 1% better and stretching yourself to do 1% better. And so that a lot of times comes with finding the people around you that are going to be very honest and transparent with you on, hey, if I were you, maybe focus on X, Y, and Z. So listening skills, executive presence have always been two big focus areas.
Absolutely. Angie, what about you? What would you add?
Yeah, I mean, executive presence for sure. We just got back from President's Club, and my husband and I were kind of joking, all of the strat reps, they all communicate the same. They all sound the same. They all kind of dress the same. We're they're just clones, in a really good way. They're awesome. But it was their executive presence, when they spoke, everyone listened. And, interviewing AEs all the time, especially women, I think something that they do, and this goes back to executive presence, where it's not just about what you say, but it's how you say it. Women tend to say things with the up speech. That's we're not asking a question, but to the listener, it sounds like a question. And so, I think a skill or something to work on is definitely listen to your calls, listen to see if that's something that you do. I guarantee you do it at some point. Because at the end of the day, you could be saying all the right things, asking all the right questions, but if you aren't saying it in a way that the listener, believes you, that you are, credible and that you're the right person, you're really going to miss the mark. And so I think listen to your calls. It goes back to executive presence, but it specifically goes back to your up talk, your up tone. And there's I'll share it with you so you can share it with the people on here. There's this awesome podcast from Mel Robbins, a lover. But she talks about that, the science behind it, how to practice, how to really work on that not being something. But yeah, up talk. I think that's something really basic, work on it. And then, another thing that kind of plays into that too is just care, put the work in. A lot of the reasons why, when I go to Danielle and I'm I want to hire that SDR, it's because they're giving us awesome leads, but also because they're the people that they show up to the segment wide things. They ask the questions, they win the contest, the cheesy contest, the dial blocks. So I think, there's opportunities for you to stand out every single day. And I think just know what lists and what leaderboards the people on the top are looking at and make it a point to always be on top of them. Mm-hmm. So I think up talk, and then just kind of give a shit is what I would say. Really care about the results that you're putting up there. And it's sales. We're competitive. Win. I think that's like a great way to, just kind of always be on the radar of the right people to put yourself in the best position to get promoted.
Absolutely. Watch that inflection. It is something we all probably either are currently suffering from, had suffered from, and it's hard to know that you're doing it until someone calls it out. But once they do, you will always notice it. So like key into those calls, listen to those call recordings. Mindy, what about you? What skills, qualities, qualifications, different things come to mind?
Well, I will say executive presence for sure. I think as women, you almost hear that often, like, oh, there was a lack of executive presence. And I think it is said about women a lot of times. So that's an area where I definitely have really put some emphasis on. So for me, it was making sure that could manage down and up. So if you're leading people, you have to be able to speak the language of your people and be able to really make sure that you can manage the employees that are maybe at different levels, but also you have to be able to manage up. You have to be able to speak the language of the leadership, right? What do they care about? What are the kind of key things that are of their interest, and really be able to be in a conversation with them. And I think it is building that confidence. You have to be able to be in a room with anyone and be able to tell a story. So you can know your business, you can know your customer, you could be the best, but if you can't communicate it effectively, then there's going to be a problem. So that's where I would say that executive presence for sure. The second thing I would say, I don't know, this is just a very practical thing for me as I've grown in my career, is data analysis. And I really challenge everybody, because even if you're at an AE level or a manager or a senior manager, you have to be able to look at the numbers and be able to identify the gaps in performance. When you can do that through data, not just because you have a feeling or because the qualitative feedback has told you this, but when the data can support your claims, that's what matters. So I would say identifying those gaps through data, being able then to put an action plan together to drive performance is critical. So, and again, you can do that at every single level. If you're, looking at your own sales numbers, what specifically is where the bottleneck is, what specifically is the challenge that you need to overcome, and the data will tell you that. So I would say those two areas have been the most critical things that I've focused on throughout my career.
Excellent advice here. Yes. And definitely I'm hearing a theme, and I think maybe we need an executive presence session for women in sales. So thank you for the idea. And thank you for all of the advice here. I'm personally most excited for this next question, because I think this is not excited in the sense that it is an exciting topic or that I'm happy about it, but I think this is an area that is really difficult for women. And especially if we're on teams where there is only 1, 2, or 3 women on the team. What is the best way to stand out amongst peers internally while still being a team player? So this gets a bit more into how do we continue to elevate our own career without, stepping on top of other people. And I think Angie, I think it was you in the introductions that talked a little bit about like hyping other women up and really, and so this sort of, I think, will take us into that a little bit too, because I think specifically when there's only a few of us on a team, it's really easy to kind of become combative with one another, unfortunately. And so trying to undo some of that work, some of that historic, existence of that. So let's start with you, Angie, and then we'll go to you, Danielle, and you, Mindy, afterward to talk through this.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of like, just not scientific, but like some just like part of the way that we're wired to like look at other women and to like, view them as the competition. Yeah, there has to be something like just biological about that. But I would say like early in my career, there was like one other really like, kick butt salesperson at CareerBuilder. It was a girl. We were so competitive for so long. And, that was like way over a decade ago now. And like, she is still to this day one of my very best friends. Cause I feel like as soon as like you flip that switch of like, I just need to focus on my results and like need to make sure that, I'm doing my job and like performing well, but it doesn't have to come at the expense of anyone else, and someone else's success isn't at the expense of mine. I feel like once that switch is flipped in your brain, like you unlock so many new levels of just possibilities for yourself. And so I guess how to stand out, it's like the best way for a leader to look at someone and say like, you're going to be great at whatever I'm hiring for, is previous success is the best way to predict future success. And so I do think like, keep kicking butt, like doing your job, but then like celebrate the people on your team. And that's not just the women on your team, that's everybody. There is that is not a zero-sum game. Like there is opportunity for everyone at the top. Everyone can get to their quota. You're not selling into the same accounts. If they're on your team, like you all have your own book, share your wins, celebrate one another. And I think that is like one of the biggest differences at Motive than other companies I've worked at, is like there really is this sense of like, when someone else wins, it just means you're that much closer to a win yourself, or there's a way for you to learn from that to like bring it to your own, your own opportunities that you're working. So say like keep kicking butt, do your job, all of that. And then, really make sure that like you're giving recognition and like celebrating the people around you. And then, give recognition to the people that helped you. The one thing I love is when I see in our Slack channels where the AEs will be like, shout out to Mariah. She just sent me this amazing lead. I had an awesome conversation. We're going to trial. And I feel like that speaks more about the person that said it than in my mind, even Mariah, because you've got the, like your ego is low enough that you're gonna recognize and celebrate the people around you. And so I think, give thanks where thanks is due, give them shout outs. People love it. No one hates a compliment. And then just keep kicking butt. That would be my recommendations.
Love it. Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, I think Angie like took so many words right out of my mouth. I go a little deeper into that too, is mentoring others. I think there's always this notion that I have to be the best. And we all want to run towards like being the best, number one on the leaderboard. But that also comes with almost like a responsibility, and not necessarily a responsibility, but like mentoring others. How you got there, bring other people up with you. And one of the best leaders that I've ever got the chance to work with told me that if to move up, you want to surround yourself with people who are going to push you out of a job. And so by mentoring others, sharing your tribal knowledge, how are you going to develop the next leaders, allows you to move up as well. And you never know, you're going to learn something yourself too when you're mentoring others. And so, and that's one of the things that I really love about Motive and about my team, is I can see somebody on my team mentoring another person, and they shout each other out, and then it just kind of snowballs into all these emojis and all these shout outs, and it makes it so much more fun, and it shows that we're all just one team going for a common goal together. That's what success is in my mind. And so, running towards those competitions, being number one, wanting to be successful, really just caring, and then showing that throughout to other people as well is set you apart.
Absolutely. Mindy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could say it better. I 100% agree though. And I think if you have 3 leaders telling you that, like it's definitely a big takeaway. I did not become successful or have a career that I have because I was just trying to win out someone. I was constantly focused on what I could do to get better. I was always putting in the work and the effort. And I always preach this to any team I'm leading, is that I want everyone to want to be the top rep. I want everyone to be, want to push for that number one spot. I want every manager to want their team to be number one. And so it makes everyone better when we're all doing our best and we're all challenging each other and making each other better. But at the end of the day, when the, contest is over, or the month is over, or the quarter is over, we can then go back and high five each other and say, hey, great job. And because I was pushing myself and you were pushing yourself, we made each other better. So I think that being able to make sure that you do focus on what you can control, how you can thrive, and then being able to encourage others is just huge. That's what being a real, leader is, and being able to really maximize any sort of success.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's nothing better than, to be honest, like when you do have that one other person on the team who is just like, you continue to force each other to elevate. And there is something really powerful about that. So if you can do that in a healthy way, that is best case scenario. You both end up selling more, you both make more money, you both succeed. So yeah, that's the best. So I think this is great advice. And we'll continue to talk about this topic in Women in Sales, because it's something that does come up, the Queen Bee syndrome. And we've talked about it a little bit before, but it's important for us to keep kind of dismantling and talking about with one another. Yeah, as we move forward today too, I think one of the other areas when we think about leveling up our career that is both a blessing and a gift is feedback. And we always say feedback is a gift. We all love feedback. Let's be honest, sometimes taking feedback can be challenging, and sometimes it's really hard to receive, especially negative feedback. So I'd be curious from each of you, and we'll start with you for this, Mindy. When you're working with leaders, how do you ask for, take, and apply feedback to help you level up?
Yeah, there's two prime times that I really want to seek out that feedback. One is when I am in the middle or finishing up a particular project or initiative, something big. You know it's high impact. You know that you put a lot of effort and time. You want to get that feedback. And it's two areas you want to hear. You want to get feedback on both. What went really well? What did they see as a positive or a strength or something that's very positive? And you also, of course, want to hear the constructive feedback. Those are the things that, of course, you're going to focus on improving the next time. You're going to self-reflect and say, what would I do differently? So definitely during those periods of time where you've taken on something new or something big or impactful, you have to get that feedback. Secondly, I would say, just like when you're doing your one-on-ones with your manager, it may not be every single time, but there are going to be those discussions where you do start to talk about your career. I can't remember if it was Angie or Danielle, but I couldn't stress it enough, is that you do have to be direct in what your goal is. What do you want? You do have to communicate that, because that will put it on their radar, and they will help to, hopefully help to support you in achieving that. But at the very minimum, give you that feedback on what you do need to do, what may be lacking, what you do need to focus on, or what strengths you already have that are going to line you up with that. But you should be asking for feedback in those one-on-ones, both the good and the bad, and you should take it and apply it. Absolutely.
Amazing advice. Thank you. Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think at the end of the day, it's really hard to take a negative feedback or criticism from anybody. But it's not about who we are, a criticism of who we are as a person, but it's more about what we can do better. And any sort of feedback is good feedback. And I think also there should be a level of self-feedback that we have on a regular basis. And I've learned that self-reflection and that no self-feedback is bad self-feedback, because there's always room to grow. There's always 1% more that we can do, especially in sales. It's completely uncapped where we can go. And so I do think that there's a level of self-reflection there too. And then don't be afraid to go directly to your direct superior and say, hey, here's what I was thinking. Here's where I want to be. What's your feedback on this project? What could I be doing to get to this place? How can I be doing that? And then also, along with that feedback, asking for opportunities. So if you're looking for opportunities to grow in your career and your manager is saying, hey, I want to see X, Y, and Z from you, ask for those opportunities to be able to do it, or go find those opportunities to do that.
Absolutely. Yes. Angie, what about you?
I mean, +1 to everything. I think, maybe this is like too tactical, but like the open-ended questions, like, do you have any questions that we ask at the end of a sales call? And everyone's like, nope. I feel like if we ask for feedback in a way that's like pretty broad like that, it's kind of hard as a leader to think of like, well, how can I? So I would say, like, be specific when you're asking for feedback. I would say, like, what's one thing I could have done differently on that call? What is, one thing you want me to do more of next week? What is one thing that, if I worked on over the course of this quarter, you think would have the biggest impact for me? So I think try to make it easy on your leaders to give you that feedback, be direct ask for one thing. And I think those bite-sized things makes it, really easy for us to apply it. Like if they give you feedback after a call on like the good, the bad, the ugly, and you got 15 things that you need to work on, you're probably going to walk away from it and do nothing, but if you have one thing that's so digestible, it's so easy for you to apply it. So, I'd say like the way that you ask for it is going to be a good sign as to like the type of feedback you get. So ask for one thing. That would be my feedback or my suggestion on how to get really actionable, regular feedback. And then if they give it to you, you have to apply it. Because, like my husband, if he, asks for any feedback and I give it to him and he doesn't do it, I'm going to stop giving it to him, And so I do think that you really have to make sure that if someone gives you that feedback, that, they can see that you apply it, and that's going to, set the table that you're someone that's going to work on themselves. That's going to take feedback, and it's going to, make that manager just be that much more eager to, give you more feedback because they know it's going to be in the right hands. So apply it and just be specific when asking for it.
Absolutely. And a manager, I have yet to experience in my career a manager who gives really thorough feedback that didn't care about me as a rep. There was no situation in which, obviously, there are going to be the outlier situations. Not every manager is good. Some feedback is not helpful, but the feedback that I have gotten when it's really specific and really targeted towards something that I'm trying to improve in, more often than not, is very much so that I can level up and become a better rep, and it comes from a good place. And so even though it's hard to hear sometimes, know that those managers, those leaders are giving you that feedback to help you get to that next step in your career. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're receiving the feedback. I always find that helps soften the blow as well, especially if it's something quote unquote negative. But there's no such thing as negative feedback because it becomes positive when you fix it. So we are going to now navigate over to the Q&A portion. I have one more question for the panel, but I'm going to save it towards the end because I think it'll be a fun end note for us. But if anybody has Q&A questions, this is your last chance to submit them. I'm going to push them onto the screen here just so that you all can scroll through. And then Angie, Danielle, Mindy, whoever wants to take these questions and has a point of view, feel free to respond. The first question that we're going to have here on the screen is, how did it feel? This is from Molly. How did it feel to go from AE to manager? I think as someone who is extremely competitive and self-driven, I wonder how it feels to sort of give up that independent business side of selling, and what skills were important to cultivate prior to making that move.
Ooh, I can
answer one thing that comes to mind. You have to make sure that to be a manager, you have to want to develop the people that you're managing. And it's okay if that's not something that really is a passion for you. Sometimes I miss those big contracts when you got to sail through, and it's like, man, the rush of that. I still miss that a lot of times when I'm in these executive meetings. I like it because I'm getting challenged and I grow, but I miss a lot of those different pieces. So I will say that there's the good and the bad, but what I really did know that it was the right place for me as I made that transition was that I got that same rush from seeing my people hit their goals and my AEs get excited that they were accomplishing something or promoting or whatever it was. So when I started to get the rush from them, I started to say, okay, I do want to be a manager. This is a passion of mine. And so I started to really get excited about it. So for me, it was a really positive transition, but I will always also say there's a lot of sales roles that you can take on that will challenge you and grow as well. So if it's a different path of sales, moving into enterprise sales and things like that, that's also, there's a lot of growth opportunities. But for me, it was a really positive transition, but it did take an adjustment. And I did miss a lot of those, kind of exciting sales pieces that you start to get a little bit further away from in some ways.
Yeah, I'll double down on that. I think, my recommendation for anyone in sales that's an AE that wants to get into leadership is if you think you're ready, I would go up one more level. So if you are, an SMB sales rep and you're like, man, I want to be a manager, I would say go become a mid-market or commercial AE and then go back and become a manager. I think, once you get into kind of this leadership mindset and more opportunities will be available to you if you've sold as an IC at a higher level. So I would always say if you're I'm an SB rep, I want to be a manager, go be a mid-market rep first and then come back and be a manager. It'll just, your career path after that first management role will be a lot broader. And so that's my recommendation. And then, there's leadership is authority and influence, right? Authority means you're their boss. Influence means they follow you. And so I think, you have a ton of influence as an AE over other people on your team. And so I think start to understand what that influence looks like and use it for good. You know what I mean? It is, if you're the person that jumps on the gossip train and uses that influence for bad, I think it's not good. And so I think leadership doesn't just mean you're their manager. Leadership is influence. And so I think if, lean into that opportunity to be a force for good and like use your influence on your team today by being a mentor, by, jumping on calls, asking your boss for how you can help. And I think that'll help build some of those skills. So when you eventually do go into a management role, you've nailed the influence part of it.
Love it. We have another question. I really like this next question. Let me pop it onto the screen for all of you. So this is from Jamie. Would we be able to hear your perspectives on actually enjoying being an SDR and wanting to hone the craft for a few years so that you can become a manager eventually and actually have been in the trenches for long enough to be really good at teaching the job? It seems there is a lot of rushing in sales and pressure to always get to the next thing. But what about the mid-long game?
Yeah.
Good question.
Great question. I am more than happy to kick this one off. As a senior manager over our SDR org, the SDR job, let's be real, it's hard. It's tough, but it builds a lot of grit and a lot of resiliency. And so my suggestion here is really continue to move up in your career and don't overlook an AE position, right? Because in AE position, you learn a little bit more of negotiation. You learn how to speak to people at a different skill set, and you can utilize that in management. Because management isn't just about teaching people how to do the job and building them up there, but it comes with a lot of accountability as well. We have to be really, really in the trenches with our team to understand what's working and what's not. And then if we're not doing what we're set out to do, it comes with those accountability conversations as well. But I think moving in your career, whether or not it's going to AE or manager, there's no wrong path, right? There's always ways that you can move into AE to an RSM as well eventually. So I think a lot of it is just knowing that there's something ahead, that we're in it right now as an SDR, but there is a future goal to come into play. And 1 year, 2 years as an SDR is a blimp in the radar compared to a 20-year career moving up the ladder.
Mm-hmm. Any other point of views on this question? Otherwise, we have more questions, so can keep rolling. All right. We're going to go to, okay, let me mark this as answered. Great question, though. I think I could not agree more that I think there is a pressure throughout our industry to just move to the next thing. This also goes from a lot of folks who are really great AEs that maybe don't belong in management or leadership and feel the pressure to move into those roles strictly for titles. So just want to let you know there are plenty of folks who stayed the IC route and have been successful and have enjoyed it, have made a ton of money. There are people who went into leadership who have been successful, who have enjoyed it, who have made a lot of money. So it's all about figuring out what works for you and enjoy the journey. Or, if you're in the SDR role, get through the journey because it is tough and you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about other companies. So more power to you. We have one other question that came through in the chat, and then I'm going to have us pivot to some of the open roles that you all have because I want to make sure we get to talk about those. There was a question that came through in the chat, which now I'm not seeing, but basically it was around building your personal brand and what advice you have for building your personal brand. This one actually referred to LinkedIn, so more externally, but you can also speak to it internally if you'd like to. Just was curious if any of you have a point of view on this.
Yeah. Someone told me once in my career, and I think I took it way too personal, as I just told you not to do with feedback, but they said they say, don't judge a book by its cover, and they have to say that because you're going to judge the book by its cover. And so I do think that, know what what that cover is, and is it telling the story that you want it to, I guess. And so, if you want to be thought of as like a professional and you want to be thought of as an expert, it's like, know that first impressions matter. And, I think dress the part a little bit. And so I think, as like a young professional, know that you need to dress like an adult and make sure that you're showing up professionally. And that is how you are building your brand internally with the folks that you work with. even like showing up on Zoom calls, as a sales director, I like take note of the people that look like they just rolled out of bed for the 8 o'clock dial block. Like they're not going to be nearly as, strong in the phones, or as the people that like look like they like took the time to like get ready and they're showing up and they're like reporting to duty. And so I think just like put the effort in. People are going to judge the book by its cover, make sure it's telling a good story. And I think that's the same thing for LinkedIn, like make sure that the Cliff Note version of your career is one that, tells the right story. Like put out numbers out there. Like I want to see, like the results. I want to see the success. So if you have, one presence club, if you can shout out your attainment, but also know that like that's a public story. So, I've seen reps that have, worked at Motive and gone on and have, claimed some like pretty steep results that weren't necessarily true either. And I think just be honest and tell an actual truthful story, and, be cautious of, what people are going to see when they log onto the call or when they like show up to work.
Fair enough. Good advice. And yeah, everybody is back channeling nowadays. So whether you put a real number out or not, it will probably get found out at some point anyways. So definitely build your personal brand, build it internally, build it externally, and be mindful of that. Danielle, we are going to go to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the open roles that Motive is hiring for today? And I'm going to, while you're doing that, drop a link to the open roles into the chat channel here. And just so you all know, please use that link if you apply, because it will notify the Motive team that you're coming from the women in sales community and actually flags you as a candidate. So Danielle.
Yeah. Awesome. Just kind of give you a little high level of our culture. I think we've mentioned it quite a few times about our culture being super inclusive of all genders and just inclusive generally. Super supportive, collaborative. So for example, my favorite thing is going into every single one of our meetings, whether it's all hands, whether it's a town hall with Schwabe or a CRO or a meeting with Angie or my team's meeting, and you see emojis fly with all these celebrations. It's the most fun I can see. And then seeing the Slack channel, everybody coming through, like all excited about everybody's wins. Come join the team. We would really love to have you. So we do have quite a few open roles. Just to name a few, we have an SDR onboarding and bridge program manager in our enablement team. We're hiring for regional sales managers. So if you have AE sales experience, go ahead and put your name in the hat there, as well as SDR managers. We're hiring for sales development reps as well, a director of go-to-market sales onboarding, and then some business development reps. So if you are fresh out of college, business development reps would be the perfect spot. And then we're also always looking for account executives.
So many roles, so many exciting opportunities. If you're job seeking, we have had members move to Motive. Highly recommend. Check out the open roles link. We'll cross-post it into the Women in Sales Slack community after this. We're going to wrap with a rapid fire question, 30 seconds or less responses, no pressure. For our audience that's here today, what is the top piece of advice that you would leave them with for them to get promoted in 2025? Mindy, starting with you.
Okay. I would say don't sell yourself short. I think women especially, we do not put ourselves out there enough all the time. If there's a role that you're interested in, verbalize it, communicate it, and don't sell yourself short. You absolutely, if you're even thinking about it, I can guarantee you're probably qualified enough for it. So go after it.
So good. Thank you. Danielle?
I would say always remember that your voice matters and how you use it can open or close doors. So always utilize your voice. Do not hesitate to raise it at all. And using that yes and communication is always a way to like open those doors. Your voice matters. Always use it.
So good. Angie?
Yeah, I would say find a mentor. Like if you don't have one, I think find a mentor and be a mentor. I've learned more over the years from the people that I've mentored, from like their experiences, what they're working on. And it gives me the opportunity to just kind of, learn from them. So I'd say find a mentor, be a mentor, build a really strong network, because, I got to Motive because a mentor of mine knew somebody that knew somebody. And so, I think the people you surround yourself with matter. Women want to help other women. I think we just want to be asked. And so I would say be bold. If you don't have a mentor today, or if you only have one, ask another person to, be that mentor for you, and then see who is around you that you're working closely with that, might could use you as a mentor as well.
Very well said. Thank you three so much for being here today. Thank you, Motive, for partnering with us for this event. I hope everyone that was in the audience today took away some really good learnings. Mindy, Angie, Danielle, thank you so much. We will be over in the Women in Sales Slack community continuing these types of conversations. We will cross-post the link to all open roles at Motive there as well. And we will see all of you at our next event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.